Hi, good morning, everybody. Daniel, I don't know what all that means as well, actually. Yeah, who gave him that intro? Okay, hi, everybody. It's such an honor to be here. I heard from John there are representatives from 52 countries. I've often spoke about design on various platforms, but this is the first time that I spoke on a platform with God's word. And that's really powerful. So what I'm going to share with you today, it's really about not just what I do, but how I believe what I do is also inspired a lot by who God is. Okay, so before I start, let's do a quick survey, right? If I'm going to ask a question right here, how many of you think you are creative? Please put up your hands. There are quite a lot of you who put up your hands. I would say probably about more than 3/4 of the rooms. There are probably some of you who are not that confident to say that I am creative. And why I ask this question is a lot of times I'm not sure in my profession when I speak with people and then I ask them, to think of new ways to do stuff or to do certain things. I get the response, I'm not the creative type. I'm not sure how often you got that, but as a creative professional, I get that a lot. So I'm often inspired by this. In Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And I've often been inspired by this because as I look at the world around us, I realize that God formed the world out of nothing, right? And He said it into being. But when He said it into being, I believe that it was not just a word. I believe God knew how it is going to look. He had an exact blueprint of everything that He's going to create. So it is not just a word. I believe when you look at a visual like this, God must have intended for the flower to look like this, with the vibrancy of the color, with the graduation of the tone on the flowers. And I believe as God was creating the world, He had all these visuals etched in His mind. And so I often tell people, and I said, I used to be a furniture designer. That's why I was in the Furniture Industry Council. And people ask me, why do you choose to be in the furniture industry? Oh, Jesus was a carpenter. That's why I'm in the furniture industry. Right? He was. Right? And the same reason why I'm still in the creative industry, I will always tell people because our God is a creative God. Right? So if there are any of you who did not raise up your hands just now, can the person beside them reassure them and tell them that you are creative, right? Because you are created in God's image. You are creative, right? You just have to believe that God is creative. I am made in His image. I am creative, right? Right? So I believe that in all the challenges that we face in the business landscape, in the work that we face, in the family front, on the ministry front, I believe we can be creative in our solutions, right? And so this is what I want to share with all of you today. And this is almost the other spectrum of a natural beauty. I believe you have been here for at least about 5 days now. I'm not sure how you have enjoyed the city. I think Singapore is a beautiful city. Those who agree, you can put up your hands. Yes. I think it's a beautiful city. But what's amazing about Singapore is that nothing's natural. Right? Nothing. The visual that you see right in front of you, nothing is natural. Right? And I was amazed this morning when you entered a room. It's in a tropical country like Singapore, but we are wearing fleece, we are putting on shorts, and it's freezing, right? But it's supposed to be a tropical country. I was expecting to come here in my Bermudas and my t-shirts and my shorts. But that's how it is. Singapore, many people say that Singapore is like a giant refrigerator, right? Once you step into Changi, it's aircon all the way till you leave Changi. Okay, so I want to share with you, this is a quote that I love very much, that our Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of Singapore, shared earlier part of this year at a conference. He said that good design thinking was a key reason for Singapore's successful journey from third world to first, and it will be critical in the country's future transformation for it to remain an outstanding city in the world. He explained that design is a core element of Singapore's nation building, and nothing we have today is natural or happen by itself. And so I want to share with you, what you see around you today, the things that you have seen in Singapore, they are all actually designed. We have no natural resources. We have even the water that we drink, we have this thing that's called the new water. I'm not sure how many of you heard about the new water, but I can assure you that you have drank it. New water was actually how Singapore it was out of a solution that we tried to be self-sufficient with our water. So we used the water from the sewage, and we purified it. And it becomes new water, and the water is cleaner than the normal drinking water, right? So it has been in your tap. You have been drinking new water, okay? All right. Okay, so this morning, we talk about creativity, we talk about design, but a lot of times when we talk about this, we always think, I think, on the other side of design is really one of the keywords that people use is about innovation, and we often link it to technology, right? So I'm going to flip some of this, we like acronyms in Singapore, and then let's see how fast you respond to them. Artificial intelligence, right? That's one of the buzzwords these days. Augmented reality, right? And when you think about that, you think about this, right? That's augmented reality. Pokemon Go. Virtual reality, right? Virtual reality has been very useful, especially in the design industry. A lot of the furniture shops, interior designers have been using this to help people visualize how it looks like the future home. Internet of Things, right? Everything is controlled by mobile phone these days, right? And they are going to put everything on the internet so that it makes it easier for you, supposedly. Automation, digitization, and of course, I'm very skeptical about this, but well, people have been fairly crazy about blockchain. And of course, when we think about all this, we inevitably think about the word disruption, right? It's such a popular word in the past decade. And everybody is just saying that, oh, my business is being disrupted, right? Our industry is being disrupted. And often as we think about disruption, we think about technology, right? Right? Technology causing disruption. Who agree with this statement that technology equals to disruption? Please put up your hand. There are quite a number of you, probably maybe 1/5. Okay, but that's what I'm sharing with you today, that technology does not equate to disruption. I'm going to tell you why, but this is what I believe. Technology does not equate to disruption. And I'm giving you examples to try to substantiate what I'm trying to tell you. Let's look at some of the definition of disruption or when disruption occurs. This is from HBR. It says when mainstream customers start adopting the entrance offerings in volume, disruption has occurred, right? This is a definition of when disruption occurred. But I really believe that disruption occurs when we start rethinking and reimagining what exists currently. And it has to be that starting point. And why I do not believe that this technology will bring about disruption is because I have the firm belief that technology is a tool to bring about disruption. But it is not what causes disruption. This is one of my favorite companies. I believe it is for many of you. I'm not sure. How many of you have used Airbnb before? Not many. Probably just slightly half. I'm quite surprised. I thought most of you would have. I started using Airbnb, I think, in 2012. I've had such nice experiences in Airbnb that I've actually stopped staying in hotel when I travel with my family. So whenever I travel with my family on holidays, we always try to book a house on Airbnb, especially in Australia, for example. Wonderful, wonderful houses there that you can't probably afford in Singapore, right? But there was one I remember that we wake up, you step out into the living room, and then there are kangaroos jumping outside, just outside the living room, and beautiful mountain views. And so this is Airbnb, and they say that they are one of the first disruptors in business. But what makes Airbnb so disruptive to the industry? In fact, one of the amazing things that I just read is that the kind of rooms or the houses that they have, it's more than the top 5 hotel chains in the world put together. That's what they are now, right? But one of the key things about Airbnb is that I realized it's not new, right? Even before Airbnb existed, I rented house. I've stayed in houses. It's not something that's terribly new, right? But what is it then that Airbnb does so well? And I've realized that Airbnb, one of the key things that really struck me was really how they have so designed the system so well, so immaculately, that there's no chance for you to try to speak directly to the other person. If you ever, okay, I must confess, Lord forgive me. You know, sometimes you try to think, oh, let's cut the middleman, right? Let's look at nice houses, let's email them and say, hey, come, can you, so I share my phone number and all, you know. I want to rent your house, can you contact me and all. But I realized that every time you send a message like this, the email address gets blocked off, your handphone gets blocked off. There's no way you can rent a property from Airbnb unless it is through Airbnb, right? And the process is designed so well that that's one of the key reasons for the success of Airbnb. And the tool is very well designed. If you have experienced the website, if you have experienced the app, you'll say that it's such an easy tool to use. And so I think the key thing that Airbnb brought about is really about how they brought a traditional business model and make that successful. Yeah. Okay, let me just show you. These are some of the pictures from Airbnb, the kind of houses that you could stay. I must share that I'm not paid for advertising for Airbnb as well, okay? And then there's this beautiful tree house, right? You can go look for it at Airbnb after this. But this is my personal experience. Anybody from London here? You recognize this place? Where's that? St. Pancras, right? And St. Pancras has this beautiful property that was out on Airbnb. So when I was planning my celebration for my 10th wedding anniversary, we had a tour of London right up to Scotland. And I was looking out for properties to stay in. And I saw this beautiful property on Airbnb. Want to make a guess where I stayed? I stayed on the clock tower, just below the clock tower. It's actually the clock tower, just below that clock. And you want to see how it looks like on the inside? So this is where you actually see through to St. Pancras Station from the bathtub on the mezzanine. This is the living area leading up to the clock tower at the top, and then this is the sleeping area, right? But this is something that hotel cannot provide, right? But because of the platform that's made available on Airbnb, this is made possible. And that's why this is one of the key reasons I'm such a convert, right? Because of the experiences that it offered. But what's more amazing is that Airbnb did not just stop there. They went on to create experience, right? Experiences in that country. And this is what the CEO said. I want to make sure, and we're certainly on the path, that we are not just a home sharing company, that we can take big bets and be an end-to-end travel company. This is his vision. His vision is not just to have that model of renting houses, properties, caravans, but his model is to provide that experience that will be distinctively different from travel companies, that is different from the existing experiences. So what is Airbnb creating? They are redesigning the experience of travel. That's what they are doing. They are redesigning the experience of travel. And they are using technology as a tool for them to do that. That's another good example here. We all know them. Grab is more popular in Southeast Asia. But I remembered when Uber first, actually Grab came into the market after Uber. When Uber first came in, I think the kind of reaction from taxi companies are like everywhere around the world, right? They make a lot of complaints to the government, they do protests, they block the roads, right? And then as I was looking at all this, I really like this quote from Jeff Bezos. That's really powerful, right? Complaining is not a strategy, right? If your industry is disrupted, complaining is not going to help you solve that problem, right? So I really like this because I thought it resonated with what it is all about. Whenever something disrupts our industry, something causes our business to fail or fall, we complain. But besides complaining, what is it that we like to do? I forgot to tell you that actually complaining is one of Singaporeans' favorite password as well. Pastime, right? So I want to share with you the story of Grab. Grab is really the big player in terms of ride sharing around this region. In fact, they were so successful, they managed to acquire Uber in March this year. And I was just trying to dissect what is it that Grab did that was so clever to be able to kind of kick a big player like Uber out and continue to grow its presence over here. And so I want to share with you some of the things that I thought was how Grab kind of redesigned the business model. And I'm sharing with you step by step some of the things that we do as designers to help businesses redesign business model. And I'm going to share with you the methodology a while later. But what really happens in the first place is that we believe that even when they are designing their business, they first examine their look at the existing business models, okay, and see what are the gaps, right? Identify those gaps, and then discover these insights. It's okay, I think the slides are made available for you, so you can download it. So they are discovering the insights, and then from the insights, they understand what is it that needs to be done to change the business model. Let me give you a very good example of the taxi companies in Singapore. I remember that many years ago, if I believe you have been to Orchard Road by now, right? The shopping street in Singapore, Orchard Road, not yet. You can, visit. I think it's just massive shopping malls and shops. Nothing really interesting for me. And I remember many years ago in Orchard Road, if you are waiting at the taxi stand close to midnight, there's zero chance of you getting a taxi. And the reason that happens is because the taxis are all hidden somewhere. I'm not sure if they built a cave in Orchard Road, but they are hiding somewhere. And they only come out at midnight. It's not because it's Halloween. They only come out at midnight because at the stroke of midnight, that's when we have that surcharge, right? So they earn 50% more from the surcharge. So it's impossible to get a cab. I think from 11:30, 11:50, it's already very hard to get a cab. And so I believe they had this mentality that if you need a service, wait for me, right? But if you dissect the business model these days, the successful businesses are those that bring their businesses to the people, right? That's what it is. Deliveroo does it that way. Same with ride-hailing companies, Uber. So I think this is what they have discovered, right? Business model does not just work with you coming to me, but as a business, I want to come to you, right? And then they co-create ideas and ideate new models. That's when they do not create solutions from the boardroom. I think what happens in corporations is that we try to solve a lot of our corporation problems in the boardroom. But that's not the way to go. To solve a good, to have a good solution for your problems, you first have to understand your customers. And that's why when they create solutions, they never do it alone. The new way of creating solutions is to bring your customers in, understand them, what is it that matters to them. And then they start to build a prototype. They don't go out in a big way. They seek investment. They have a business model. They build a prototype. And then after that, they will test it. After they have tested it, they'll refine the model, they'll refine the experience. And that's why you find that your app, a lot of the apps that you have often ask you to update, right? Because they keep upgrading that experience on the app. And that's why we are updating our apps. And then thereafter, they design new services, and then they will increase the revenue. What happened with Grab was quite simple. When they were trying to wrest Uber out of the market, they were giving a lot of promo codes. The rides were really cheap. They're giving a lot of promo codes. But once they have acquired Uber, everybody was complaining, right? Everybody is complaining about the price surge during peak hours. And it's quite crazy. But as a business model, that's what Grab tries to do, because I've given you a good share of goodies. And now it's payback. That's what's happening. And so I want to share with you what I personally believe, without great insights, there can be no great solutions. And how do you get these great insights? I believe that every business is a people business. If you look at our business, we are surrounded by our suppliers, our employees, society, stakeholders, our customers, right? And so when I first practiced design thinking, I was struggling a bit. Should we really be looking at a human-centered design? Didn't church tell us that we should always be God-centered? So I was struggling at first. Am I really doing what God wants me to do? Because I'm really practicing human-centered design. And then I had this powerful revelation that people are at the very heart of God. As much as we should be God-centered, God told me that you are at the very heart of him. That's why he sent Christ Jesus. That's why he did all that he did. When he created the Garden of Eden, when he created the earth, it was for men. And so I realized that actually, at the very heart of God, it is you and I. And so when we want to have a good business solution, at the heart of each and every of us, people should be at the center of what we do and why we are doing certain things. And so I look at Jesus, right? Jesus was really people-centered. He was there mixing with the tax collectors, with the sinners, disciples. He spent a lot of time with the disciples, with the Pharisees as well, people that he don't like, with the sick and the poor. And there are two passages that really struck for me, right? This is the one on Zacchaeus. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. Right? Jesus took notice of him. He was standing on a tree. There was a big crowd. But Jesus took notice of him. And Jesus wants to stay with him. And the other one that really struck me was about this lady who has been bleeding. The woman had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him in the crowd and barely touched his clothes. She had said to herself, "If I can touch his clothes, I can get well." As soon as she touched them, her bleeding stopped, and she knew she was well. At that moment, Jesus felt power go out from him. He turned to the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" His disciples said to him, "Look at all these people crowding around you. How can you ask who touched you?" But Jesus turned to see who had touched him. The woman knew what had happened to her. She came shaking with fear and knelt down in front of Jesus. Then she told him the whole story. Jesus said to the woman, "You are now well because of your faith. May God give you peace. You are healed and you will no longer be in pain." An amazing part about this passage really is, right, Jesus could have gone on. Because if I read the slide earlier, the bleeding had stopped, right? She was healed. The moment she touched Jesus, she was healed. But why is it that Jesus insisted on finding this lady and talking to her, right? He doesn't have to. He knows that the clothes that the lady touched has brought healing. He knew that, right? But still he turned around and he asked, who is it? And I believe Jesus did that because he wanted to have a word with this lady. He wants to encourage her, you have been healed. And so I believe our Lord Jesus is very people-centered in every way, right? And so with that, I'm very encouraged from then to continue to take this practice of using human-centered design in all the projects that I do. So this is what I'm going to share with you, human-centered design. And human-centered design is very much a subset of design thinking, right? Which is an innovation tool, which I'm going to share very quickly with you. It's an iterative process. By no means is it just about going from understanding to ideating to prototype and to test, and that's that. It's not. It is actually very much about deep empathy, understanding what people really want. And then from there, understand the insights, use the insights to co-create solutions with them. Because I am not creating on my own. I'm doing something for you. I want to co-create that solution with you. And then before rolling out into the market, to prototype. And why do we prototype? We prototype so that we can fail, and we can fail faster. Because the faster you fail, the more you can adjust the model, the more you can refine it, the more you can kind of ensure that moving forward, it's going to be a good model. And if I break down very quickly on each and every of this, basically what we do for understanding, we first observe. Observation is very important for us. When we work with telco in Singapore, very often we will sit in the shop and we'll just observe for half a day, one day. And we're just looking at human behaviors. That's what we do. And we note down the insights, discover them, and we reframe. A lot of time why reframing is very important is that it's not that we can't find a good solution. It's because we are asking the wrong question. And once you have the insights, you realize, oh, actually, this should not be my question. My question should be reframed, right? And that's what it does. And then we move on to conceptualizing the ideas, ideating with them, co-creating, and then we refine the ideas. And then we build prototype, execute them, integrate them, think of integration with the current business model, and then we assess them, interview the users, understand their experience, and then we evaluate, and then we start all over again. We might refine, we might conceptualize, or we may go straight back to the drawing board. We probably do not understand the user enough. Let's try and understand again and observe what really works for them. So this is, in a very brief form, what design thinking is. I'm sure many of you have heard about this. This is a very interesting picture. I took this on a plane as I was watching the show The Founder. I'm not sure how many of you have watched the show The Founder. It's really about the story of McDonald's, right? It's about the story of McDonald's. I thought it was a really good movie. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but I thought it gave me certain insights. And this was supposedly done in the 1950s. Before they kind of roll out the mass franchise of McDonald's, they did this exercise in a tennis court. And they drew all the different parts of where the kitchen equipments are supposed to be on a tennis court. And then they got the people to stand there and to try to pretend to do what they're doing, right? And to maneuver between the spaces, right? And so after they did that, they found that, this is not the best design, okay? So they erased it, and then they drew it again. And still it's not good enough, and they erased and they drew again. And so I believe for many, many years, McDonald's, if you have noticed, for many years, until I think past 5 years, they start to change the model a bit. If you have noticed, for many years, McDonald's kitchen looked the same. Because it works. Because they have prototyped it. Because they have tested it. And it works for the kitchen crew to move around the different spaces without bumping into one another. So that was how they used that prototyping even in the 1950s, before the term design thinking was coined. This was another good one. It's I think like a modern food center in Singapore. It's called Timber Plus. It's at a fairly commercial area where there are a lot of business people having lunch. Like all good Singaporeans who like food, We don't look out for signages. We don't look out for what they sell. We look out for the queues, right? We look out for the queues. So as I was looking for a good place to eat on that day, I was looking at the queue, and I thought, this must be a really good store. There's a long queue, right? And so I was about to join them. And then I realized, oh, but all the plates and the bowls are empty. And they're carrying them. So what are they doing? They're actually queuing up to return the trays. And if you have been a true blue Singaporean, you know that it doesn't quite happen, because we like to leave our trays and our bowls and cutleries on the table. I'm fairly ashamed of that we are not that responsible with what's remaining after we eat. So then I was trying to understand, so what made these people queue up and return their trays? And so I went on to this area here, where they're returning the trays, and there's this conveyor belt that you just put your tray in. But it doesn't stop there, because every time you put a tray in, $1 drops out. $1 drops out. So it becomes like a refund for the food that you eat. And all the food stores in the food court charge $1 more, so that when you return the tray, you get your $1 back. And so this is one of the cleanest I've encountered in Singapore in terms of the food court. There are not many trays on the table. They don't need a lot of cleaners, right? Because everybody is just taking care of their own cutleries after they're finished. And so I thought, wow, such a wonderful concept, right? And apparently, I think the government thinks that it's such a wonderful concept too. So they roll this same scheme, same technology out in a hawker center. The hawker center are usually at the heartlands, where the general Singaporeans, most of us stay, right? Where the HDB flats are. So they did this, and this was the result. If you notice, the tray is missing from the table, right? The plates are still there. Make a guess what happened, right? So what I believe happened was that they took the plates, everything out from the tray. The machine is there, put the tray in, get the $1 back, right? Eat their food, leave the cutleries on the table, right? That's what happened. And so I asked myself, why is it that it worked so well here, but it did not work here? And then I found that, and I believed, it's that they did not understand the demographics of the people who are there, right? Right here is the working crowd, right? Right here you're talking about people who may be really old, inconvenient for them to return a tray. There may be kids, because it's really in the heartland, it's where people are staying. So I think it's not just about adopting the technology, but understanding how that technology is going to serve the people that you are reaching out to. So I think it's been a failure in many places. We still see a lot of such situation in the hawker centers. So then it's fairly sad, right? I remember many years ago, there was a student who tried to solve this problem. He designed a table with holes on the table, huge holes. And so what happened is that you're supposed to put your tray in those holes. You're supposed to eat it. And then after that, you're going to put the tray and return them, right? And then he was mocked at because they thought that it was a rubbish idea. But I thought that was so brilliant, right? Because you have holes on the table, you put your trays on, and then you return them, right? And then you don't have to put your plates and bowls down, right? So I thought these are some of the very brilliant examples. I like what Steve Jobs say. He's not the nicest guy I've read, but he says some really wonderful things. He said, design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works. So I want to share with you a personal project that I've done and how the design thinking process has changed the entire dimension of the project from where it first started. We were giving, as I run the integrated agency, we were giving a task to design a recruitment campaign to attract new talents. So the usual way of how we kind of advertise for recruitment is to put them on the newspaper, is to go on road shows, is to visit some of these universities. That's what we usually do for recruitment. But before we started this project, I asked the CEO, right, how has your previous recruitment campaigns been successful? And he said, not really. And do you want me to do the same? And he said, well, I thought that's the only way of doing that. So I said, maybe not. Would you like to park a part of your budget that you intended for this this very expensive advertisements on newspaper? Would you want to park a part of your budget so I can do an ethnographic research for you and try to understand what is the campaign that will really work for your company? So he agreed. So after we have gone through that entire process, we spoke with about 15 teachers, not just from within the school, but from teachers that are teaching in preschools. These are preschool, kindergarten, teaching in preschool and kindergarten that are actually from their competitors' company, right? So I was speaking with them. We were speaking with principals. We were speaking with people who are going to join the workforce. And after speaking, we have really good researchers. The good researchers, if you should look out for, is that after speaking with that person for 1.5 hours, if the person is crying, if the person is telling you about the family problem, if the person is telling you about everything after that 1.5 hours, you have got for yourself a very good researcher. And so we worked with researchers to speak with people, 15 of them, and you got the insight that this is actually what we really need to do. How might we invest in our existing talents that will result in a successful recruitment campaign? The entire question was reframed. And that was not because we imagined it to be. But one of the key things that we found is that a lot of people that they start to hire, some of them, they are mothers who are waiting for their kids outside the school. And then the teachers, these mothers have been out of the workforce for a while to look after the kids. So then the teachers come out and tell them about their children, right? And then some of them say, oh, actually, I'm looking for a job. I'm thinking of going back to workforce. And then these teachers tell them, hey, why don't you try to work part-time with us? Just ease yourself back to the workforce. That was one of the examples, right? But there are also many other examples that we have found out as we spoke with people, that a lot of the recruitment, successful recruitment in the past was through the word of mouth from the people from inside the organization. So we recognize that one of the key things that we need to help them to build is to build a culture or redesign the culture within the organization, right? So this changed the entire dimension of the project. From one that's outward-facing, it became one that was inward-facing, right? From one that's supposed to be spent on a lot of advertisement, it became one that is spent on their internal resources. From one that's supposed to design brochures to be given away, it became one that we built a tool for the design to share, the teachers to share about the company. So it changed the entire dimension of the business. And so we did a lot of this. We did a lot of internal sense making. If you look at the boards behind, they are actually the pictures of the teachers whom we spoke with. It was actually the insights that we had. We kind of come together, synergize those thoughts, integrate them, and then we redesign the solution for the client, right? And so we came up with personas for them. What are the key categories of people that we are looking at based on the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? Some of them are there because the balancer, for example, they are there because their focus is really about the pay, the location. Their greatest thing, the thing that matters most to them is the commitment to family. Well, at the other spectrum, right, it's about the kids. There are people who genuinely want to nurture children. It's their passion, right? So we put this in, and we redesigned the campaign for them. So we came up with this name. It's called Fun on Board. It is both an internal as well as an external campaign to let people internally know that they are going to have fun on board this company, as well as to portray the company in a new way to talents that they want to attract. And so we went on to design the different things that they can do, both on an umbrella level as an organization, because they have about 300 schools in Singapore, as well on a satellite level in the different schools. So we designed the different programs that they could do to kind of build this culture up. And most of all, what's most interesting is that the CEO was an uninteresting person. It's kind of boring. How do you portray, he's not like a Richard Branson. How do you portray fun on board culture when your CEO is boring, right? That's a challenge. So we spoke with the CEO. can I propose to you that you let someone else manage your Facebook account, right? Right? And portray that organization in a different way, right? So that, because people relate the organization a lot of time to the CEO and the founder, right? And so we kind of change the entire dynamics of that organization as we're doing that, right? Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up. I am not an expert in publishing, although I've always wanted to publish a book. It's remained in the back burner. But I like bookshops. I really like bookshops. It's a pity that many of the bookshops in Singapore, I think most of them had closed. There are not many left. So whenever I travel, I visit bookshops. And I spend a lot of time in them. So this is Tsutaya in Tokyo. I think one of the nicest bookshop I've visited. This was what I saw inside. They had a Starbucks inside the bookshop, and people sitting around, browsing, reading books. They have a really nice restaurant in there. Anyone from Tokyo over here? Japan? Oh, have you all visited? I'm sure you're a regular there? No? No? You should. It's a really nice bookshop. And there's a bike in there. I'm not sure if this is Harley, but that's what they were doing. They were putting a bike in there, selling the T-shirts along with the books that's next to them. It's almost like an art gallery as well. And I was looking through this entire place. I was quite amazed in terms of the kind of experiences that it gave me, right? I think in the past, bookshops used to be books, books, and more books, right? And a lot of times when you stay in a bookshop for too long, it's almost like, oh, my brain can't take it anymore. You know, it's like, it's too much, right? Too overbearing. But the experiences that this place gave me is that, oh, when I move to a different place, beyond the books, it feels like I'm taking a fresh breath of air. Right? It's almost like a break for me from the books. And then I go back to another section, right? And so this was the kind of experiences. And when I had enough, I sit down for a coffee or I have a meal. This was another one that I saw recently in my trip to Taiwan. One of my favorite bookshop as well is called Asleep. They used to have a 24 hours bookshop. They used to be open 24 hours, the bookshop. But what I liked about this bookshop, although they did not do it as well as Tsutaya earlier on, they have an open-top kitchen right in the middle of the bookshop. I thought, wow, this makes so much sense to me, right? They're trying to sell culinary books. They're telling people about diet. It doesn't make any more sense than putting a kitchen right there and doing a demo in front of everybody, where they can try, they can sell their books, right? And then, not only that, they have spaces for pop-up shops to sell food stuff, right? As well as, of course, they have the books. And as I was thinking about this, was it really about the redesign of the space? And then I realized it is not just merely a redesign of the space. It's a redesign of the business model. Because that's when their revenue will not just come from the single source of selling books. They are selling spaces. They are selling things. They are working with partners. You can put a bike in here. You can pay a certain amount, for example. You can put your merchandise, you know. So I think they are changing the entire business model of how bookshops should be. And I think this is so powerful, and I just want to encourage you that even as we think about how we can be creative in the way that we do things, try to do it from the perspective of your customers, of the people that you're trying to reach out. And I think the kind of result that's going to bring you is going to be fairly astonishing. That's the other one. This is where my inspiration to finally publish a book is going to be. Right? I'm sure a lot of you would have known this. Direct publishing. I don't need a publisher anymore. I don't need publisher to vet whether I'm a good writer or a bad writer. Okay? I need a copy editor to go through my content. But what happens is that I can self-publish a book. I can take 70% of the royalty. The book will be out in the market in about 24 to 48 hours, and I can reach the people I'm going to reach. I'm taking this as a change to the industry. But the question that I really have then, what are you going to do about it? Yep. I want to leave you with these words. And I'm going to share with you who said this. Innovation is not about grand plans, KPIs, technology, big budget, and ample time and resources. The main obstacle is really ourselves, our organizations, and all of our entrenched processes, bureaucracy, and the culture of being afraid. Afraid to fail because all these years we have succeeded. Afraid to hunger because we have been quite full. Feels like a passage in the Bible that says that you had too much of the world, right? So I say this, make a start no matter how small. This was said by our education minister in a conference last year. He's trying to encourage the public servants to make a start to innovate in the processes, to innovate in the way they do things. So with this, I'd like to thank you for your attention. It's been a real pleasure. If you want to reach me, I can be reached over here on LinkedIn. This is my private link, right? So yeah, I'll be happy to take some Q&A if there's time. Otherwise, I can take it off stage with you.